In the last few weeks, I've been trying to dispel a lot of misconceptions that I hear here on the gaming scene, and I noticed that I haven't done my developer shoutouts in a while. Now, my developer shoutouts are things that I actually mix into my videos when I talk about games from development studios that I absolutely have a lot of respect for. It's not easy to be able to bring your games and bring them in a quality-based state. Now, even if these developers sometimes have made games that I probably was not too fond of in terms of, say, the content, story, and all of the above, there's nothing wrong in giving them props for being able to basically bring their games and have those games actually resonate very well. Believe you me, for those of you who maybe you will die by the notion that I'm some kind of X-bot in your mind, I'm more of a pony if you actually wanted to look at it from that perspective. Some people don't believe it. I came back to PC from the PlayStation 4, so I do have an affinity for a lot of the kinds of games that a lot of the, that PlayStation studios were making during the PS4 times and so on and so forth. One of my favorite development firms in terms of a technical ability, and like I said, this is from the technical perspective because this is from the developer side, is Nixxes Software as well as Insomniac Games. Now, one thing about PlayStation Studios that we must highlight is, they have an advantage that many other development teams don't have. Xbox's developers, they have to develop for multiple SKUs by default, even though they're under a publisher that, has its own IPs and its own properties. They have to develop for the Series S, they have to develop for the Series X, and they have to develop for PC and its multiple SKUs. Now, I've made 2 videos dispelling the notion that the Series S is the problem. You might want to take a look at those videos because we talk about it from the hardware perspective. And actually, the amount of evidence that we had was granted to us by some of these PlayStation developers. Now, looking at Nixxes and looking at the work that they've done, and even Insomniac Games, on bringing a game like, Ratchet and Clank to the PC platform, it's quite an impressive feat that they were able to basically design their game and plan their engineering around the hardware that they had. The PlayStation 5 hardware is basically a mid-range to low-end PC at this point based on the technology that's available here in the market. But still, this development team used the advantage of having to only basically focus on one platform to be able to get the game as good looking as they possibly could. Now, Ratchet & Clank is actually not, a game that I'm a fan of. I don't really care for the game, but I did get the PC copy, even though I skipped the PlayStation 5 copy because I knew the quality of game that it was. It's a game that my kids would be able to play. In fact, I think I made a mistake. I bought it on my own Steam account rather than buy it on my kids' account. So I know they're like, Dad, where is the Ratchet and Clank game that you wanted us to play? So after you beat that Lego series, kids, come talk to me, okay? Just letting y'all know. And so it's something that they're, kids are very impressed by, in a sense. One thing that I actually even do for my kids is while they're while we're driving at home, they get to watch the gameplay that I actually did because I played like a few hours of the game after buying it. And I captured the gameplay footage and they get to watch it in the car. It's just that interesting that they're just like, man, these graphics are quite wow. And, the production and the quality is really out there. So shout out to Nixxes. Shout out to Insomniac for actually being able to put this game on the PC platform and make it a really good looking game and make it a really good performing game. Another developer shout out that I want to put out here is Santa Monica and Jetpack Interactive. Now, we know Nixxes. Nixxes has been doing some really good work simply because they did the Ratchet and Clank port, they did the Marvel Spider-Man remaster port, and those were just, delicious in the way that they landed. However, there's another studio here called Jetpack Interactive that is working with, PlayStation in some of their games, and seemingly they've, come to the aid of bringing God of War to PC. God of War to PC was actually a really good port. In fact, if you listen to Digital Foundry's analysis and their conclusion, they gave this particular port a very, very high, notation and a high mark. They said that this port was just something that had everything you needed when it came to actually establishing a port. And so, yes, shout out to these folk. Also, shout out to Santa Monica for basically bringing a game of this quality. Now, yes, they have the budget, they have all of that, but we've also seen other teams with similar budgets fumble the bag. So again, this is another developer shout out from me to these studios because they really do bring something unique to the table. As much as, you hear me criticize PlayStation as an organization, I'm not going to gloss over the work that's being done on the ground by the developers who are actually doing a lot of the work trying to bring the creative enterprise. Even though we may or may not agree with them, even if I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that I have a lot of issues with God of War Ragnarok and some of the story beats and all, but still, I can still appreciate that God of War 2018 was an experience that, man, I am totally down for. Beat the game on the PS4. I think I went again and beat it on the PS5. Then when it came out on PC, I got it and I beat it on PC. Like, yo, the game is quite a solid game. There's no doubt about that because it just absolutely rocks. And another development team that I wanted to highlight, and this is actually, in my opinion, one that I felt was very well managed as a team. They managed their game from top to down, even with the media madness that was actually coming their way. They did not flinch, neither did they allow for any of that stuff to intimidate them. And that is Avalanche Software. This team rocked it. They brought their Hogwarts Legacy game. They were able to pretty much, in my opinion, get this game out from multiple ports day one. Now, they had some delays, but they still were able to get the game out for the Series XS, PS5, and PC. Now, yes, at launch, the game seemed to be sucking a bunch of RAM and VRAM. It was a game that had some performance challenges. However, in looking at the game and seeing what the game has to basically deliver, I mean, you gotta say they were able to basically take all of this visual quality and jam it into these machines. Now, on the PC side, I can say with some really high-end machines, there were some challenges. But these challenges are not unique to that team. Right now, the technology is changing that 1440 and 4K gaming is readily available to a lot of individuals who are enthusiasts. Developers are having to figure out how they're going to get their games running good at that fidelity. What I've noticed with a game like Black Myth Wukong, for those of you who actually care, is simply the fact that the game runs very well on lower resolutions. I have a $600 build, the one that I built to show you guys that it's not really expensive to build a good gaming PC, a gaming PC that actually does do better than the Series X and even the PS5. I've noticed that that particular device can actually play Black Myth Wukong with more stability than even a device with the 4090 that I use for game development and a lot of high-end tasks. This is simply because when I try to play at 4K, I'm pretty much giving this particular game a whole bunch of stress. However, on lower resolutions, it's no problem. So seeing how they were able to also face and surmount that challenge to me was just very interesting. And at the end of the day, I'm happy that they were able to go ahead and manage their releases, and they did not put themselves in the constraints that the developers at CD Projekt Red were in when it came down to Cyberpunk 2077 by promising what in reality they didn't seem to have the team to pull off. You guys remember that during that time, they had first delayed the game to November 19th. And then again, they came out and delayed it another 21 days because they needed to actually work on 9 different versions of the game. Now, even the folk at, the Hogwarts Legacy needed to work on almost about the same amount. I mean, the only difference is they don't have Stadia at this time. However, Hogwarts Legacy really did have to actually move and get about those, same versions. Actually, they did have 9 because they went to the Nintendo Switch. So shout out to them from a technical level, because in being able to pull this stuff off, you really have to have good planning. You really have to have a team. So I'm learning from these guys, man. And then on the PR side, man, they were just phenomenal. They took the community at face value. They took the community at heart, and it was able to basically shield them from a lot of the nonsense coming from the press and those who were attacking. I wish they had not caved to take on the consultancy groups who I think are basically, those that are trying to, in a sense, extort you. That's what I think they're doing. I think developers need to focus on writing and making their games more than bothering about outside influences, because their creative enterprise is what the gamers truly do appreciate. And finally, on this list of mentions is the studio Game Science. Now, Game Science is kind of special in a sense to most developers who are looking at this stuff. Now, the reason I say this is because I would love to basically one day make my own video game, make it good for the fans and the audience. I'm actually taking a lot of surveys from time to time when I'm not, basically dealing blows to PlayStation, lies that and Xbox nonsense that we hear on the internet, because I think that's crazy. You will basically see me in the Discord communities talking about game development, watching game development videos, doing some demo and some testing and all that. And I think Black Myth Wukong is a special game, and Game Science is a special studio in my mind, simply because they're a studio who was able to achieve this kind of gameplay and, visual fidelity using a game engine that's installed on basically almost any game developer's PC. It's interesting when you look at, say, Unreal Engine as a tool, and you're trying to wonder, what is this engine capable of? You're doing work, you're watching videos, you're learning and all this stuff, but you don't really know the full capabilities. And then to see it all culminated inside of a game of this quality is insane. Just to say, wow. I mean, if, say, we were talking about Insomniac or Nixxes or these other studios, yes, it's a whole different conversation, right? But then to be like, wow, this studio that is pretty much, somewhat of a baby in this level of development, not saying that they're a baby developer, they've developed other games, but in this level of development, they're basically a baby, and they bust out the door with this package. Man, I gotta say, this is really not only a big deal, but also very inspiring. So I'm sure developers across the board are looking at this. Now, yes, they had a AAA budget, don't get me wrong, but it is still very nice to see that this is something that is capable and within the reach of many developers now, seeing how Epic Games has basically gone ahead to provide something. And then finally, the devs at Epic Games. I know all of us Unreal Engine folk, we have our challenges and we have our problems and our qualms and our concerns with the way Unreal Engine actually is deployed and with some of the systems. However, it is such a powerful engine to have at your hand for free until you make $1 million. But we understand that the alternatives in the market right now are just not there, and Epic Games is actually as developer friendly as could be. Yes, many know Epic Games from the Epic Games Store on the gamer side and money-hiding games, something that I'm not a fan of, by the way. I'm sure you've watched some of my videos when they tried to basically keep some games exclusive like Metro Exodus, Alan Wake, and all that. I'm not a fan of it. However, the work that this particular team, in terms of the company, has done to be able to bring resources to developers cannot be understated. In fact, many of you may or may not know, Wukong it has its own, like, this character itself has its own story within the Epic Games system, as well as it already had the original lore and original story from China, yes, but it seemed like it was even inspiring enough that they were able to pretty much bring it into their ecosystem. So if you wanted to go ahead and take a look at all that, you'll see that there's much more in terms of all of this. But anyways, I thought I'd do this as a video in itself because I just haven't had the opportunity to give these shout outs in some of my other videos. We've been talking really heavy about, this whole gaming thing and how, video games are made and blah, blah, blah. And so this has gone under the radar and I don't want it to stay too long. So thanks so much for watching the video. I really appreciate you guys' time and audience. And yeah, let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Who are your favorite developers? I know I didn't say anything about Rocksteady. Yes, simply because of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. They used to be like one of my top developers a long, long time ago. But seeing how they basically, abandoned their fan base to pursue a trend, to me, I think they really went down the list. And, new developers like Game Science are starting to look pretty good in terms of the way that they're just bringing, the kinds of games that many of us single player players, many of us actually do like. So Rocksteady, it's okay. Do better. You can probably make it back into the fold. And then, we'll have a conversation then. Thanks for watching. Peace out.